But also, not only is it not a criminal offence, it's not a civil offence to put out fake news. Like, obviously, if somebody puts out something false about me, I don't have any remedy against them unless the news they put out is defamatory. That's the only remedy you have. But in terms of if false news is put out there about a political issue, it can't be rectified. And that's why it's so important that there are strong media organs in this country that we can trust. Like, I know people can be critical of RTE and our national newspapers and some of the established websites, but like, they are trying to present news in an impartial way. And I know we can all criticize them at times, but like, where really you're getting fake news is through the large social media companies, Facebook, Twitter, and they have a responsibility to ensure that they provide some editorial control of what's going out on their platform. But the difference between, say, Facebook and, say, the Irish Independent is that the Irish Independent recognise that it is responsible for the information contained on its website and contained in its daily newspaper. Whereas Facebook says it's not responsible for what's on Facebook. And it says, listen, we're simply a platform. We don't get involved in that. Whereas the Irish Independent, if somebody writes a letter into the Irish Independent, the editor will look very carefully at it. And he's not going to publish it if he thinks it's fake news. He's not going to publish it if he thinks it's defamatory of somebody. So you know, they exercise editorial control, whereas Facebook doesn't. And really, what I'm not just picking on Facebook, but it's an example of a social media company. The way to resolve this is that social media companies need to recognize that they are publishers, and that as a publisher that they have responsibility. In terms of how the legal system needs to be changed, I think that's the way it needs to be changed on a European-wide basis, that we need to recognize that the social media publishers are publishers in the ordinary course. They say they're just a platform, but they have a responsibility for what they publish on that platform. And I think if that responsibility can be recognized in law, well, then I think it'll be much more difficult for them to put out fake news.
So would you be in favor of holding companies as responsible for the information on their sites, even if it is fake news? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but you see, it's hard to stop. But the reason why the Irish Independent and the Irish Times don't have fake news isn't because they're afraid of being sued. They're not going to be sued. If the Irish Times runs an article tomorrow saying that, you know, I don't know, but says something that is false, but it's not defamatory. If it publishes fake news, you know, there's no legal remedy against that. But the reason it doesn't is because it values its editorial standards. And I suppose it is signed up to a press council as well, and the code of conduct of the press council to publish accurate information. So, like in terms of social media, I think they should be put on the same platform, the same level as newspapers and other publishers and other broadcasters. And if they're on the same level, well, then they'll assume the same responsibilities as the Irish Times and as RT and other publishers. Because what we don't want to do is to curtail freedom of expression of the media. Like, they're entitled to be critical. They're entitled to, you know, give politicians like me a very hard time and be really critical of me. There's nothing wrong with that. But the issue in terms of fake news, the only way that's going to stop is if the social media company realizes it's a liability for the content of what it publishes. And because of that, it'll know that its reputation is going to be damaged if it keeps putting out false news, in the same way as the newspaper's reputation would be damaged if it kept putting out false news.